Jurriaan Myer in Saigon in Vietnam. We do a regular update what's happening in China, what's happening in Vietnam, how you look from Asia to the Netherlands, and we're doing a quick update. First, you are in Saigon. I thought you were supposed to be in China.
Yes, I'm here already since March, early March. A lot of things happened, but one thing didn't happen. That is that I made it to China. I actually just arrived home from Japanese airlines, and basically it will take a while before there is flights out of Vietnam and into China. So that's a global phenomenon, and we just have to live with it.
Yeah.
My company tries to get me overland into China, but that seems also to be very difficult.
Yeah.
So
And so why is
I'm
that? All the foreigners are they refuse to put people on planes from China's perspective or Vietnam's perspective?
both actually. So China has now closed its borders, like many other countries, to foreigners. But I actually can get in because I'm a permanent resident. But my challenge is that China has restricted the number of flights to one flight per week to a very limited number of countries, and that does not include Vietnam for a couple of reasons. So I would have to transfer in Japan or Korea, and that is very difficult. So I have
Okay.
to be patient.
And South Korea, they accept it as sort of a clean country, right? Even though they just got another bunch of 2,000 extra people. But
Yes.
Vietnam, even though you have very few cases, it's not seen as a clean country.
Vietnam itself sees it as a clean country. I think all the cases are now sort of caught and under treatment. The only issue that we have now worldwide and also in Vietnam is people entering the country. And that is the reason that there are very strict quarantine measures in place. They do allow Vietnamese now to return to the country. But there recently came in a flight from the Emirates with all Vietnamese, and about 10 to 20% of people is infected. And that scares people a lot. And that's why I also think that in Europe, like UK, will now decide to do quarantining very soon. Yeah.
Okay. How are they looking at you as a foreigner in China? I hear a lot of your friends are seen with a lot of suspicion. Is that true? Are foreigners being treated right in China from your perspective? What you hear from people, and how is it in Vietnam?
Well, in China, I think it's getting better because they know the borders have been closed since March 28th. So all the foreigners who are in there, they should be fine, in terms of health. That actually circulates on the internet. Here in Vietnam, there is none of this. So I really like how Vietnam is very upbeat under this pressure, how people are just focusing on work and on the happy life. So Saigon is sort of an oasis of happy life. People are going out. The lockdown has ended 2 weeks ago, and the city is totally back to normal. So we have to wear masks in some bars and restaurants, but any else than that, everything is back to normal, including education. So schools are back to business very soon. Yeah, good
Okay. It
news.
looks it looks like you have no cases at all in Vietnam. I mean that looks too ridiculous. How many people are dead? Because this website even doesn't
Yeah.
mention it.
Well, still, last time, zero, right? The official count is zero still. So it's amazing. And I think it's actually true because, again, the only new cases are imported ones. And I think that's the biggest risk worldwide, in China as well.
Yeah, yeah. What do you hear of your friends in China and your colleagues in China? How are the foreigners being treated in China?
I think it depends on your own attitude. I think if you speak Chinese like me, I think it's easy to crack a joke and tell them to chill out.
Yeah.
We have seen some instances, this story about South China and Canton and Guangzhou that black people were treated badly for a couple of days, but it was corrected by the government. There was a big backlash out of Africa. I think it's about educating people. I think people everywhere are scared. I think that's understandable, but I think it will get better. It depends on where you are. In the big cities, it's fine, and I have no indication that when I get back that there will be some bad attitude. Not at
Okay.
all.
You're forced to be in Vietnam, and you're actually you're starting to like it, I think. Huh?
I like it for a couple of reasons. So number one, I find people extremely accessible. I'm talking about Vietnamese. I'm now also starting to get into the expat community, which is very much focused on a couple of industries. So it's interesting to learn that Vietnam, I think, has a fantastic future ahead because this month they will sign a free trade agreement with the European Union, which will, within 5 to 7 years, completely break down all tariff barriers. And that means that the golden age for Vietnam is just to come. So people are very entrepreneurial, very open to meeting. I met at least 5 very valuable friends or acquaintances here, Vietnamese, of all kinds of backgrounds, Chinese, Vietnamese, American Vietnamese, very eager to meet new people. So it's a very networky place. I like that. While China now is more a little bit closed into itself, becoming more nationalistic, and Vietnam is very forward-looking and optimistic. So I think there's great business opportunities. And I will start now also explore opportunities for my current company as well. Yes.
And so they're not going to have an economic lockdown, or the economy is not going down. They think they're going to have 5% growth still in this period. So it's they're not going to go in a big recession, is what they expect.
That is what they say. So this morning I spoke to the chairman of the Dutch Business Association, and I think that is obviously, the good news they want to spread. But the problem with Vietnam is for 75% dependent on exports. And these exports are a lot of furniture, it's a lot of clothes, shoes, but also fruits to neighboring countries. Fruit and vegetables is very cheap now here because they can't export it as much. While in Germany, the prices went up because it's very difficult to bring it up from Spain into Germany. So I think Vietnam will be hit because tourism also will not continue. I think the lockdown, not allowing foreigners in, will continue for the remainder of this year. So you're not going on a vacation if you have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine, right?
Yeah,
so
but even
it
though
will be hit.
Though that's happening, it's 5. They think they're going to grow for 5%, and the IMF is thinking they're doing 2.5%. So there's not going to be a huge lockdown. I heard also from China. Actually, I heard incredible export figures that instead of 20 or 30% less what we expected, that there was a year to year even a small growth in export in China. What is of course we never believe numbers, but what is the case there?
Well, what I think is a breakthrough in China is that the government now has, other than Vietnam, so Vietnam has said we are going for the 5 point something increase. China has basically now, for this year, halted giving numbers, growth numbers or decline numbers. So I think that is a good step because I think transparency to their own population in the world is good. I do think export in China is affected. I hear a lot of people losing their jobs. There's cutbacks, there is salary reductions. So I think China has a hard time, like everybody. Because what I feel is that the demand side in Europe, but specifically in America, will be hurt hard because it will take longer. It will take much longer to recover. In Germany now, you heard that there is this. They went across this one cipher, this 1.1 now. So it's now they loosen the lockdowns. It's going up. So I think it will be a W-shaped recovery with ups and downs, and that will affect Vietnam and China a lot. They also have internal issues. China has outbreaks in several spaces, and they're starting to get used to it, that you sometimes have to lock down a whole city and open up again. So that keeps people on the edge, and that's not good for the recovery.
Yeah, but still, exports were up last month compared to the year before, so which was amazing. I mean, that is even the oil price went up from that perspective. So that is what are your you see that you are in Vietnam, you have problems with tourism, but for the rest the economy is still exporting is still going up. Maybe demand will fall down. What is your impression from your friends and your companies which you work with in China? Because you're still a director of a company in China, right? I mean, how is the activity of Structon, or what's the name of the company in China? What's your activity in China at the moment?
Well, that's what I said last time as well. The Chinese are very eager to do business. We are discussing several new deals. A company like BYD, the makers of battery-driven vehicles, but also metros and monorails, they want to work with us on a project in Brazil. We are talking to the state-owned company. They're doing rail maintenance. They are interested in our technology. They actually want to invest in our company to get an access to the Netherlands. So there is tireless entrepreneurship in China. So we are not in stasis. Actually, we are trying not only to expand in China, but also here in Southeast Asia. And that's why I'm going to make good use of my time here to see if we can get some deals as part of the metro project here in Saigon. There is a big project in Hanoi. There is also a lot of, let's say, city building and innovative city building going on here in Vietnam that needs new technology, which we could push. So while we're working on projects in China, I'm doing business development here as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Vietnam is a nice place, and I think we're all. China is now for the Americans and the Europeans. Everybody's now really going. Hey, we're too dependent on China. I mean, not even about the coronavirus, but then that all the medicine which were made in India and China and all the protective materials. Now everybody going. Hey, we need to unbundle the economy, and Vietnam can profit from that.
Absolutely. That already started before Corona. So I think there is a lot of movement coming out of China in this direction, particularly for the low and middle end manufacturing, like shoes.
Louder. Talk a little louder.
Textile, but also now there is rumors that Apple is moving parts of their production here, like the earpods. So I think what is interesting also for Dutch companies is to get on the train here to see Vietnam grow into the higher value chain. So not only the low end stuff, but also the technology stuff. Maybe they will start building batteries. And it's also the Chinese who actually are starting their companies here or transferring it here to circumvent the tariffs with the United States. There's a lot of Chinese business.
That was a big thing. Okay, two more questions. What about your view how Europe is doing with COVID? How do you, from your perspective, we can now mouth protection in the public transportation is now on June the 1st is going to be obligatory. Do you think we're way behind and we're doing all the same things, but a month later, and then, or what is your impression?
I agree with that. I think Europe is behind the curve. So I think face masks in public, they give confidence. They help people to be more relaxed, even if there is not much medical use to it. But it seems it's useful, so let's do that. The same with quarantine. So now the UK and Europe will consider that people who come from outside the European Union or even another country will go into quarantine because they will find out that the second wave comes from these infections from outside. So I see Europe is a very mixed bag. And I think we are very shortly will see a little bit of disappointment that this reopening of the economy will be hampered by new infection outbreaks. And that is something that needs to be managed. That is even happening here in Asia. But I think, Europe should be maybe more firm and maybe also more working together, because it's a very a little bit of a messy picture with each country having their own policies. Austria, for instance, they want to have the tourists back from Germany in summer, but Germany basically for now declined that because they saw what happened in winter. The après-ski, created a lot of infections, and they're not confident enough at this point in time to open the borders yet. So it's not moving too fast, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but I mean, it is really important to have not one size fits all. It's really, we have to have different policies for Groningen because there's nothing happening there than for Brabant. Isn't much more specific policies for specific areas much more important? So shouldn't it be different measurements for different kinds of countries?
Absolutely. I think even the borders is not relevant. I think it's more localized. This is what China is doing in Vietnam as well. So if there's an outbreak, you just lock down, the quarter, you lock down the city. There was an outbreak in Beijing, they control. There is now another one at the northeastern border. And they're now getting used to it that might happen. So in the apps, in the distancing apps, you have all these red, yellow, green codes. So if you live in that area, and then you just have to re-quarantine for another fortnight. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. Last question. We just had this thing in the Netherlands. We wanted to have a contact tracing app. Huge discussion. We had a nice hackathon. I thought it was really wonderful, but they got lots of criticism that everything was bad, and now they're going to a much slower path. How is these contact tracing apps? How do you view those? Do you have one in Vietnam? And how is it in Asia? And how is it in China? And how do you see our stumblings on that in that department?
Yeah, I think it's really important to make a decision for something that really works. So I know there is a contact tracing app in Singapore, but it was not used by many people. So it has not been a game changer because there was also technical issues with Bluetooth. China, Vietnam do not have contact tracing in that way. They do it in a different way. They trace you through your geolocation out of your SIM card. And if you are physically located or living in an area where there is an outbreak, they will basically grab you. So they're not. This is a different strategy. So they basically
they have 100% penetration of the app. They just use the telecommunication. They don't do apps. Everybody if you have a phone, you have a contact tracing app.
Exactly. exactly.
Okay.
So even if you don't agree, but it's not peer to peer, but it's basically centralized out of the telcos.
Yeah, yeah, no problems whatsoever. And does it work? Do you feel that the information you get on your phone, do you have already had? Did you already get information that there was somebody near you, or how does that work for you?
Absolutely. In the Vietnamese app, so I'm filling the Chinese app because I have to record my health status at least 2 weeks before I go into China. So they remind me if I don't update, I will be cancelled, on the next flight. But in Vietnam, they do the same. They show a map, and if in this apartment building somebody would be, suspected, they would lock down the whole building. But they're also informing you, so they're showing you maps. So I think it's good. Now everybody think everything is clean, but we will have to get used that there will be some minor outbreaks. So far they catch everybody at the border, but I think there will be outbreaks, and I hope people will be calm enough to basically see that happen and still continue life. So that's the real new future I see. Yeah.
Not the Dutch way, just centralized using the telcos. Okay, Jurriaan Myer, thank you very much for the update. You need to jump into your next call. It's nice to see that you already take advantage of the crisis and that you are doing business development in Vietnam, and that there's a lot of things happening and that they're growing. We'll see how that goes, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks to see what's going on. Oh yeah, you were tested, right? They basically asked you to be tested.
Yes, I was picked up by a lorry, so they rounded up all foreigners here in a lorry. So this
All
was not
foreigners.
Yeah, so they wanted to make sure that everybody who came into country just before they closed the country entirely. So
Yeah.
I was put into the police station. Everybody was very nice to me. They tested me, in my throat and my nose, so the full Monty. They didn't call me back, so that means I'm fine, and I think it's a good thing. I think testing, that's the next topic, that. I think that will be the next thing. They will make sure that everybody is tested. Yeah, even
Did you have
Vietnamese.
to pay for that, or did you have to pay for
No.
your own test? No.
No, it was for free.
So this is the message from China, from Vietnam, from Asia, and a view back to our European trying out. Thank you very much, Jurriaan. See you again.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.